Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. I interview leaders, experts and business professionals from around the world who are bringing leadership principles and know-how into the digitally driven 21st century workplace, with focus firmly on the how-to rather than the what. Each episode is in aid of a charity chosen by my guests, and since 2020, we've made donations to over 80 global and local causes. Welcome to my guest Bryanna Bone for this episode of the Rethink Leadership podcast. Originally from St Catharines in Ontario, Bryanna now calls Oxford in the UK her home. She's an author and creator of Critical Minds, especially with the focus on AI, through an AI literacy curriculum at Oxford Innovative Education, OXIE for short. This is all through her passionate reshaping of how education can be more inclusive, creative and future-facing for the world of AI and tech. Bryanna has led award-winning education initiatives at the intersection of storytelling, technology, and for those with special educational needs, work deeply rooted in both professional experience and lived insight as somebody with AuDHD and Dyscalculia. Bryanna's debut novel, The Dawn of AI, and its upcoming TV adaptation explore themes of neurodiversity, ethics, and innovation through an accessible and empowering lens to support young people everywhere in their digital and AI journey from all angles. Supporting young people is more than a profession, it's Bryanna's calling. She strongly believes that critical thinking, compassion and imagination are key to helping the next generation thrive, especially those too often left out of traditional pathways. We discuss the why, what and how to behind getting this right in an AI world and the impact on young people and on business. This episode is in aid of Save the Children International, to which we've made a donation as a thank you to Bryanna for joining us. Hey Bryanna, thanks very much for joining me. Please introduce yourself, your digital journey, and your passion for the next generation coming through.
Okay, so mine's Bryanna, and it's really difficult to know where to start. So I started as a youth worker since I was just a really young person. I worked in churches, starting new churches, new ministries. So that's kind of where I got my entrepreneurial spirit from. And then from there, I became an author. I started writing books, and I've always really been interested in sci-fi. So that's kind of where like my digital journey started is with sci-fi, specifically like superhero movies and some Disney movies, like Meet the Robinsons. And it's funny because I never actually thought I was smart enough for science. I've had dyscalculia, ADHD, different learning disabilities, so I never really saw the sciences and technology as something that was for me. But still, I was always like gravitated towards it. And then after my bachelor's degree, I started teaching and copy editing on the side for tech companies. And so that's kind of again where I started to get more into tech, specifically in the regulation side. And then I wrote my novel, The Dawn of AI, which is a sci-fi novel. That was my master's thesis. And from there, it's just been like I'm a full-blown, tech startup sci-fi novelist, and I've just accepted this is where I've landed, and it's been a whirlwind.
It's absolutely great, and not many people can talk about a journey like that. And as a fellow sci-fi fan that has gone right through my my life, you're starting to see a world where science fiction is becoming science fact, depending on which science fiction you like reading, of course, within that. So you're actually building maybe just like an offshoot question here for you, because you're building sci-fi novel, but based on exactly what's happening here in the now. How do you meld
Yeah.
those two things together?
Oh my God. It's ah, so so my novel's set 10 years in the future. It's the near future. So everything that is in the novel, I wanted it to be grounded in reality. And part of the big purpose of the novel is to specifically help prepare the young generation. So this is for young adults. So something like Hunger Games type readership. And so I wanted to paint a picture of the future that wasn't necessarily dystopian, wasn't dystopian or utopian, but something just on the hinge of either or. Right. And something a bit more nuanced, which we don't really see a lot in science fiction. Usually it's all dystopian, like AI is taken over the world, or maybe like Star Wars, where it's fully integrated and yeah, it's tough to call Star Wars like a utopian, but like that kind of black and white. And so I wanted to write a novel that was right on the shoulder of the singularity, right on the shoulder of it could go either way, and what that hinges upon, what that future direction hinges upon with the future of technology, and how young people not only should inherit the future but shape it, and how that can actually look like in my novel. So yeah, I don't know. It was like I said, like it's something that is fiction, very much fiction. Uh, but it had to be grounded in reality because it's kind of like it's almost like prophetic. I wanted it to have the feel of a prophecy, but more of an empowering story that children could take and go, you know what? This isn't outside the realm of possibility, you know?
Oh, I love that. The feel of a prophecy, but you own it and you empower it. And it's
Yeah.
so it but it is so now. Uh there's so many voices weighing in on AI for children. Kids' brains aren't built for these dopamine driven devices. Kids are going to use AI either way. So, we've got to be prepared for the future on one hand. Yeah, but there's all of this going on. So we are at that kind of crossroads. You're right. It's whether it's a utopia or a dystopia, I don't know. But where do you stand on that specifically? Because I'm sure that's been a grounding in terms of where then you've written into.
Yeah, so my approach to it is based off of my conversations with young people, which I'm constantly having as a guest speaker, but also in my youth work. And it I come at it from a realism point of view. I remember last year the Department of Education they were needing more research into whether AI is inhibits learning or enhances learning, and that was the big question, and whether it should be taught in schools. And I was just wanting to like scream into the, I felt like I was screaming into the void. Like, that's not the question. That is not the research question, and like, finding the right question is so important, which is something else that I educate on. And the question is actually not whether to teach AI to children, but how. Because I just did a talk at Trinity College and Oxford University, and there was a bunch of 11-year-olds there. And I asked, um, how many of you use chatbots, AI chatbots? And almost all the kids put up their hand. I don't know if their parents know, the teachers might not have known, but they're using AI already. And then, I had another student come up to me after, and again, 11 years old, and they said like they really enjoyed my talk. They think it's so important that they are taught about AI because everything's going to be AI, is what he said. And it's better to start early. Like, that is what kids are saying. They are recognizing not only their desire to learn about it, but their need to learn about it. And it's that voice that I think is missing in the conversation. We have all these adults debating over what children should be taught without actually talking to the children. And I'm not saying children should decide, but what they're saying should be taken into serious consideration.
I really like that because knowing you a little bit as well, Bryanna, your passion for education and your passion for young people kind of collide in this really. And you are championing this notion is that we've got to get hold of this and we've got to do it right and we've got to get to the how quicker. Um, But in all what I've seen you do, I was quite curious to ask whether there was a specific moment that made you rethink your entire approach to education based on your experience and what
Um,
education institutions can learn from pioneers like you about how they should evolve the sort of traditional educational landscape and institutions.
yeah. Um, there's so many answers I could use, but I think the biggest thing that has really thrown me into the research side of things, and it was because I was trying to apply for a grant, and they're like, "We need more research," and I'm like, "Dang it, how do I do this?" So I started asking students I was doing these workshops with uh, questions and collecting their answers, and it was pre and post workshop surveys. So I'd ask them 5 questions before I did my 1 hour workshop, and then 5 questions after to see the change in attitudes towards technology. And one of the questions I asked was, uh, do you believe that you can make a difference in the world for the better? And before the workshop and after, actually, I would say, the majority of girls would say, yes, I believe I can make the world a better place. I can make a difference. Majority of boys would say no. And that was contrasted with another question where I asked, uh, do you do you believe you can learn how to code? Majority of boys would say yes. A majority of girls would say no. So that showed me that, and this is primary school students, mind you, that showed me that girls have less confidence in their skills when it comes to learning a new skill than boys. But when it comes to their self-worth, there's another word I was using in my research, there's their self-regard as a whole. It was girls that had more self-regard and self-worth than boys, and when it comes to their ability to make a difference in the world. And so that was fascinating to me. And I called it the hope gap. And I started pitching it to universities to do research, but I need funding for it. Um, but from that point on, I realized that, and I realized this a little bit before, but it solidified this realization that when it comes to education, we can't just be teaching skills or even competence in skills. We need to be teaching young people how to be able to advocate for themselves, how to be able to have hope for the future. And then because of all my work with older youth, I this is just not research, but just my experience, and I am 99% certain any other youth worker or teacher can attest to this, is there is a rising apathy and lack of hope for the future in young people. Um, and alongside, especially like I said, with boys, them feeling powerless and making a difference. And so when it comes to learning, one of the biggest indicators to learning is being self-motivated. And if you have no motivation because you have no hope for the future, like it's all interconnected. And so I knew that with this AI literacy curriculum that is being built around my novel, it needed to be based in citizenship and empowering young people to not only know how to use their voice, but have confidence in what they want to say with their voice. And so that's like a really long story of how it's not easy. It's not black and white. It's not like, oh, you know what, we should switch to oral exams instead of written exams, which I also believe. But like that's like a simple, answer, but it's a much more trickier change of approach to education because of how, yeah, how kind of abstract it is. What does it mean to empower young people to change the world?
But I like, I maybe just go into that a little bit more because part of that actually is a core skill we all need, which is emotional intelligence and building emotional intelligence earlier in our kids, being
Mm,
more aware of ourselves, managing ourselves, self-motivating, understanding others, and being able to socialize those views as much as anything else. But I like that relationship that you were talking about there, and I think these are my words I'm using here, but that girls having more self-worth based on I can believe I can make I believe I can make a difference in the future. But when it comes to the concrete elements like coding, it's like a self-belief is much lower than that, which then links to, in boys particularly, a belief in others that they're not going to make a difference for me, and an immobilization in our youth, of which, like, where is my hope, like you're talking about,
mhm,
it's like where do I go from here? um but what's quite interesting about that is I also, and maybe ask you this, as you're talking there, it looks like it's how we educate boys and girls from the very beginnings. And the question that you asked about, do you believe that you can be good at coding? It's almost like that program question from almost like the last century, which is, well, that's a boy's job, or that's a girl's job, or that's a boy's color, that's a girl's color, that's a boy's sport, that's a girl's sport, whatever. How does that
mm.
all come into what you've been talking about there in terms of reshaping education, do you think, Bryanna?
Oh, I mean, my main character in my novel, Ada Akena, she's her special interest is AI development and training and software development. Um, and her brother is very passionate about engineering and the physics and kind of physical aspects of technology. And so I think it's the representation. Just, hopefully my book will be popular and more girls will see, themselves in Ada Akena uh and Aiden McKenna. I think it's important to see yourselves in multiple gendered characters. And so that's one thing, is that the representation. And I think that's also why a lot of schools are picking up on my book and teaching it, because they know, like, this, there's a lot of representation in my book. The main character is also nonverbal, and autistic ADHD. And so that's one aspect. But another thing is video games. And this is just, and I didn't prepare to say this, and it's not something I've really talked about, but it's on my mind right now because in the curriculum, one of a few of the lessons are building a video game using AI. And and it's the AI is kind of showing you how to code and how to build a video game while helping you build a video game. And uh, and I think video games are just typically more common in boys. I don't know. That's don't know the research, but I feel like that's true. Um, and then there are many video games like Minecraft where you kind of have this element of when you're building something technologically, like that could help a boy get to a place where, like, oh, I can learn how to code because I know how video games work, like even just the terminology within video games. Um, and the design element of it. So I, in my book, the main character builds a video game called The Silent Alien, and she plays it and builds it like kind of at the same time. And I'm actually talking to a video game developer about creating this video game, um, because, and it would not only be this this lovely, beautiful game where you explore different planets as an alien trying to get home. Uh, you can also be part of the design of the planets. So, like, one planet she goes to in her game that she designs is that everything flies, because if you touch land, you only have a few seconds before that land explodes, which is also very symbolic. So So yeah, I don't know. I think there's something there. And yeah, that the gamification of it all, I think is important as well, making that accessible to girls and attractive to girls as well. Yeah.
Oh, I agree. And that gamifying gamifying a lot of what we do in education. I think, and I going to a point that you made before, which I wholeheartedly agree with, around movement to oral versus written exams and being able to have a much more holistic approach to this, which brings in modern technologies at the same time. I think that's a debate on its own. So, but now you've
Yeah.
started on your book, I want to come back to the dawn of AI,
Yeah.
and probably ask you a question about, or you've talked a little bit about it now, actually, about what that is. But how did this sci-fi novel that you've written turn into a national debate competition? That's the key question.
So, okay, so it started with the novel, which still isn't even published yet. I wanted schools to read it and be part of the ending. So I approached some schools and actually visited them, had the students read the prologue and everything. And the idea, especially in Key Stage 2, you have like a reading slot with your students. That's kind of separate from the rest of the curriculum, and it could be any book. The teachers get to choose the book. So I'm like, perfect. I just flip right into the reading slot. Students can read the book, and then the idea was to then have them vote on the ending. And the ending of the book, so a little bit about the story. I mentioned Ada and Aiden and Kenna are brother and sister. Ada's nonverbal, and she had stopped talking when her mom died 5 years before the story takes place. And so their mother in the story, Dr. Ineka Kenna, she invented AGI, artificial general intelligence. So for listeners, that means human level intelligence. It's kind of the step between what we have right now, which is narrow AI, and artificial super intelligence, which is quantum computers. It would take just inconceivable amounts of energy to run an artificial super intelligent machine, which is infinitely more intelligent than humans. So it's basically like creating a god. And so AGI is just that kind of middle ground, and we haven't achieved that yet, but it's predicted that we will be creating AGI soon, and once we create that, the consciousness question will become very blurred, whether AI is conscious. And so in the story, the mother creates artificial general intelligence, wins a Nobel Prize, and then she passes away in an accident. And so there her two children kind of inherit this legacy, and this legacy is then um, the kind of the driving force of the plot of them trying to navigate what to do with this legacy. And Aiden and Kenna, they inherit this legacy from their mother, and they then at the end of the novel come to the realization, this is a spoiler alert, that their mother had secretly unlocked the key to ASI and hid it away in only a place that Ada and Aiden together could find and decipher. And then it's up to them to whether or not to carry on her legacy and create ASI or keep it hidden. And so Ada wants to finish their mother's legacy and create ASI because it would save lives. Like arguably their mother wouldn't have died if ASI existed. Then Aiden is very much like, mom hid it for a reason. It's too risky. Humanity is not ready. And so that is the big debate, even right now. Uh, and I wanted to put it to the students who are reading it in schools, whether they're Team Ada or Team Aiden. And then the final climax scene is chosen by the students, and what they vote for. So the end of the novel actually isn't finished yet because I'm waiting for students to vote and so that's part of the citizenship as well. Now I started to pitch this to schools and teachers started saying, this could be a whole curriculum, like not just a reading slot. Like you shouldn't design a whole English curriculum around your novel. I'll help. So then that's kind of how it grew into a curriculum. And then from there, the final in the curriculum, it's project based, and the students are writing a debate speech around whether they believe ASI should be created or not. They can choose a few other topics as well around AI and governance, and including how whether AI should be used in education or not. So they have 7 debate topics, and they get to choose one and write a speech or a poem. I'm allowing a poetry pathway, and so then because these students are they're doing this curriculum, writing the speeches, I'm like, well, I might as well platform their like get them to submit their speeches, and we can select winners, and then we can platform them. So it kind of was just this organic thing that happened with me in schools, starting from me just wanting them to read the book and vote on the ending. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can understand that. And what a way though to not just kind of bring that into the mix, but actually evolve the pedagogical approach for schools by so they're looking at that saying, actually, this is a great way of learning and a great way of actually collaborative learning without necessarily teaching, if you like, in some ways, because it does all of those things that you said earlier around teach them about advocating for their point of view, owning that, being empowered, being part of a
Mhm.
community as a citizen within that community, as you were talking about as well. I really get that. And it's what's interesting for me is because a lot of this podcast also is really focused on business and how we're evolving business, and these the same problems we're finding in business now because we've been kind of lagging a little bit in educating, not and I'm not even at skills yet. I mean educating about what it is, what it does, and why it's important for business as far as AI goes, and then moving that question, as you were talking about before, in business too, to the how do we do it at all levels so everybody owns it, everybody can service the customer better, and all of those. So
Yeah.
maybe if I pose that question to you because I'm thinking aloud now. So for
Yeah.
those business leaders and those in business tuning in, what do you think can be learned at corporate education level in equipping teams, different levels with appropriate digital and AI tools that enhance what they're doing and enable what they're doing rather than overwhelming it to the benefit of customers, employees, and our organizations?
Oh, it's it's such a big question because AI could be used as a tool, just like the calculator, and uh, I'm sure there was a moment in, the accounting industry when the calculator was invented. You might think, oh no, we're going to lose our jobs. Um, and and so that it does happen with whenever a new technology is created and incorporated into the workplace is jobs are threatened. Um, and those who get left behind are those who tend to not embrace the technology as a tool to enhance their productivity. Now, AI is a bit different because people are predicting it will just, instead of enhancing the productivity of the current workers, it will just fully replace them. And that's not without merit, but I do think it, it's farther down the road than people are making it seem. And but it is rapidly also relying on the fact that people do learn these tools to enhance their productivity. The tools themselves cannot replace a marketing strategist, but a marketing strategist that uses AI to, like, and trains their own AI agent in a way to help them, uh, push out more marketing proposals. Like it's night and day. So it's the how to use the tool uh, ethically and responsibly and with integrity. Now, yeah, alternatively, yeah, I do think in 10, 15 years time, which is when I ask my students, where are you gonna well, how old are you gonna be in 10 years? And they go 20, 25. And so it's like, okay, this is when jobs like marketing may be full. We'll see a big shift in the amount of people those fields, and it will be those remaining will be using AI, but they'll be able to do so much more in so much more efficiently that you'll only need like one person on a marketing team in a company as opposed to a whole team of marketing people. That makes sense. Um, yeah, it's tricky. I don't know if I answered your question.
No,
But and then
it
yeah.
is tricky. Yeah, you're right. It's about it, and it's what business leaders are asking themselves now is like, it's almost like you said there, is AI a tool that we're using which is therefore reactive, or are we moving down the agentic route more where it's a proactive enabler and therefore more akin to a personal assistant than it is like a piece of kit like a calculator, like you were talking about it. But then the
Mhm.
question comes back to that, yeah, but how?
Yeah.
How do we do that?
Yeah, and something else that I pose to the students when talking about this, because this is part of the curriculum, is the future of the economy with AI, the post AGI economy, and and the question is, okay, well, there's going to be all these benefits with AI when it comes to innovation and work. How are those benefits going to be distributed fairly in society? Because right now, it's all the benefits will be going towards the owners of these AI companies, you know. Uh, and I think Tristan Harris talks about how it's it's like a people are have been so worried about the immigrants replacing all the jobs. The immigrants are taking our jobs, but the digital immigrant of AI is actually the biggest threat. And so how are we going to, and the thing is with these digital immigrants, they're not people, it's actually a company, and so it's really going to reshape the whole economy. And right now we don't really have any governance or regulation how to redistribute wealth and benefits towards everyone. So that could look like a universal income, which Elon Musk is talking about. I don't know how sincere he is about that. Um, but I think the governments really need to catch up and get ahead of this. And that's where young people can help put, put fuel to the flame and making sure that the future of the economy is prepared and prepared and able to protect the average person, whether that's universal income, 4-day work weeks, minimum wage going up. Another benefit to work and the future of work will be more people will be able to be entrepreneurs, and that's something that WF predicted, I think 5 years ago, that my generation, the millennials, we kind of walked into the gig economy in our 20s, or freelancing, contract work, and the next generation, Gen Z and Gen A, are going into a passion economy is what the WF called it, which is entrepreneurship. And AI is completely aligned with that prediction. And I think we're already starting to see it.
Yeah, it's just so interesting when you put some of these things on the table and that movement of how the economy's shaping as well and moving forward for that. And doesn't feel like many are getting it right, but it does strike me. You go back to the 1960s and Lyndon Johnson, this was the sort of the first age of sort of mechanism and automation where this exact same points that you just raised there around AI were raised at that first time, where there was debate in the Senate around universal credit because these automated machines are going to take all of our jobs. But it does feel like this time is that we have to have a really serious debate about that because of where it's going in terms of AI, robotics, and then the ASIs as you're talking about further down the road. Although further down the road now, who knows how many years that is with the technological
Yeah.
leaps that we seem to be making. So it's we're learning every day, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I think there is some countries that are already doing 4-day work weeks. Is it Finland? It was a young female prime minister of a country, maybe Iceland. I don't know, but I should have fact checked myself. before the podcast, but there is a country that recently announced they're going to be pushing a 4-day work week in response to
Mm.
AI, and basically productivity is increasing. Um, but wage and the current structure of the work week and economy is remaining the same, and it doesn't make sense. So they now
That's
have
right.
4
It
week
needs
straight work weeks.
transformation, not change, doesn't it? And that's the whole thing. It's around the people, how we work, how we live, how we become a community, how we do things for the future. Gosh, I could talk about this all day with you, Bryanna, but sadly we don't have any more time to get into this. So let me ask you this question though. I'm sure many tuning in will want to get hold of your book. So how do they do that? How do they find out more about what you're doing and connect with you to continue the discussion?
So I have a website, www.oxie.org.uk. That's OXIE, stands for Oxford Innovative Education. So that is the umbrella company that is developing the curriculum around my book. My book is not published yet, as I said. The ending is still up for voting on whether ASI is created or not. So that will be published in September, but where I would say LinkedIn is probably the best place to follow me. I'm also going to be starting a Kickstarter in the coming days. So I'll send that to you. So by the time this comes out, you can link that. Yeah. And then you can pre-order the book through the Kickstarter.
Oh, great. Well, we'll make sure those go on the show notes when you've got that link. Let us know. And best of luck for that, finding that ending for the book with the citizens who are going to be contributing to that.
Yeah.
And remains for me to say thank you very much, Bryanna Bone.
Thank you, Jeremy. Really, it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. Please like, comment and support us on your favourite platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.